Hi there, and welcome to another really powerful Talking Insomnia episode where we're going to learn how Damien left his struggle with sleep. You may wonder what I'm doing here. Usually we go straight into the episode with a guest. I just want to say that this episode with Damien, it includes the topic of sexual abuse, suicide. It is a strong episode, so just be mindful of that. But if you are comfortable with those topics, I think there's a lot to learn here from Damien. That was all for me. Let's go into the episode.
I was looking for a fix. I tried magnesium, I tried an eye mask, I tried sleeping tablets, I tried everything, but none of it was getting to the root cause of my struggles. I was nearly thinking about the following night, and I was nearly putting pressure on myself. Okay, it was nearly like a sleep deficit, and I needed to make sure, well, okay, if I didn't sleep last night, then I must make sure I get a good sleep tonight, because if I don't, work is going to be tough. I just remember one day where I was really struggling again with sleep. And I just remember going on Spotify and I said, you know what, I'll just type in sleep. And I typed it in, and didn't I come across your work? I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I just knew in my gut, and I've learned to trust my gut decision. And I just remember listening to one of the podcasts of yours, and I just remember thinking to myself, this is what I need. He's teaching exactly what I need in terms of safety, that if you are lying awake in bed at night, that it's okay, that you don't need to be scared. That's exactly what I needed. I didn't need sleep restriction. I didn't need any of the CBT-I approach where it was always trying to fix, always trying to do. I didn't need it to be solved. I just needed reassurance. That's what I needed. And between your work and the work of my psychotherapist, those married together were both able to create a situation where my body then was safe. My nervous system was starting to realize that it's okay now. I'm safe. Here I am now doing my first ever podcast with you. I'm extremely proud of myself. I'm extremely proud of the journey that I've gone on. And maybe it comes from me being a teacher myself, but education is very powerful. The power of education and learning.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Damien with us. Welcome.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. And just so the community knows, I sent a newsletter out where I was asking if anybody would like to share their story and help the community. And you replied, so I'm very thankful for that. And which leads us to here. So yeah, Damien, feel free to tell us, how did your sleep struggle begin? Take us from the beginning.
Yeah, so my sleep struggle, it started in 2003, Daniel. I was 16 at the time, and I got a summer job with a family friend. He had his own painting and decorating business, and that's where I encountered sexual abuse. So it's, when I look back at it now, I can see exactly how the struggle started in terms of it was just my nervous system went into shock. Hypervigilance was a problem. I read that famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. And when I read that book, it really resonated with me in the sense that it wasn't just the sexual abuse. It wasn't just the trauma. It was what happened inside of me. And my body stored all of that up. And it was only in 2019 I told Aoife, my wife. So I kept all of that suppressed, never told anybody for 16 years. And yeah, it was very, very tough. When I started teacher training in 2008 in the UK, over in London, and the stress of that really got to me. The pressure of college and teaching placement and exams and all of that really affected me. But when I look back now, in particular, my struggles really started on a Sunday evening. It was that association of Monday morning. And if I bring it back to the work situation, I knew that what was going to happen in terms of the sexual abuse, it was going to start on a Monday. So my week was going to start in a negative capacity. and just that association with work and high stress, I found very, very difficult. So I moved on then from college, and I began into a permanent teaching position in London before I moved home to Ireland in 2010. And I really, really struggled with sleep, and it was a case of it used to come in fits and starts, in the sense that I'd sleep fine for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it would come again. And I always remember Aoife, my wife, saying to me, "I just noticed, Damien, you can't sleep." And we used to, when we look back now, she used to say to me, "Just turn off the light and go to sleep." But I couldn't. It was like my body just would not allow me to do it. My head wanted me, but my body just couldn't, and it really affected me. And in 2017, I took over a leadership position in a primary school, and I think that was when the I suppose, if I put an analogy of like having a rucksack on my back, the sexual abuse, with the stress of the leadership position, and then I became a father for the first time in 2018. So with all of that married in together, I think just that was really the startings of a breakdown, basically. I really struggled. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was to the point of I was getting maybe an hour's sleep, and then I was trying to go into school, and I think it really affected my behavior. I was quite, I was keeping myself to myself. I was very tired. I knew I could see people were noticing that I was tired, and just my capacity to deal with stress was really, really at a low ebb. And it was in June 2019 when I broke down to Aoife, and I just told her I can't carry this alone anymore. And I told her that I was sexually abused. And the journey started from there, Daniel. And I started into therapy for it with a psychotherapist in 2020. And that was the start of really getting to the root cause of my struggles. And for that, I'm so proud. And like I literally tried everything to try and fix that word, fix the sleep. I tried CBT-I. I had heard that this was the gold standard in terms of recovering from insomnia, but that just added more pressure to me, in the sense of the sleep restriction and the getting out of bed at night, and it just became a struggle. I was looking for a fix. I tried magnesium, I tried an eye mask, I tried sleeping tablets, I tried everything, but none of it was getting to the root cause of my struggles. So it was only, as I said, when I entered into, looking at my trauma straight in the face, that's when the healing started. And then when I was introduced to your work, that coupled with the therapy was life-changing. And I'm so grateful that I found you.
I'm so grateful as well, and that you're here, and we can learn so much from you. And of course, very, very sorry of everything that happened to you, but so glad you're here, and you can teach us so much that will help. Now, I wanted to ask you, it sounded like for a couple of years, it was like you had waves of like trouble sleeping, insomnia, but then it kind of went away by itself. Was it, and it seemed like, I'm sure it affected you, but it hadn't really taken over your life at that point. Is that true to say? There was waves that were kind of mysterious for you?
Yeah, it was. And like when things were going okay in my life, in terms of my home life and work, everything just ticked along just fine, Daniel. But it was when, as I said, that leadership position in school, when I started that in 2017, when the stress really picked up. And if something was to be dealt with in school, it really stayed on my mind. And I'd be lying awake at night, and then it would affect in the next night. The next day would be affected. I was I was nearly thinking about the following night, and I was nearly putting pressure on myself. Okay, it was nearly like a sleep deficit, and I needed to make sure, well, okay, if I didn't sleep last night, then I must make sure I get a good sleep tonight, because if I don't, work is going to be tough the next day to be able to deal with, the challenges of as I said, that leadership position. And like, if it was something in work then that I had dealt with, I could move on from it. But then it was the next maybe problem that was to arise, then the same thing would happen. And that's, I suppose, when I started learning about trauma and it being an emotional response, and that alters your brain and your body's ability to cope, it started all making sense.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. And the way I would phrase it for the community of people who listen, and then of course I feel free to comment on this, Damon, is that you enter this period where there's a lot of extra stress. You're becoming parent, you have obligations at work, and many of us would stay up late, right, at one night when there's something particular stressful going on that we have to deal with, and maybe feel tired too during the next day. But you've had this kind of like on and off struggle with insomnia in the past, and then not only are you tired, but you're thinking, no, this can't happen again. I must sleep tonight. And then it goes from the stress that kept you awake to the stress being about sleep, right? Now the focus becomes, well, now I got to get sleep. And of course, then that keeps us awake. And now it becomes the self-driving struggle, right?
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. It was that pressure, that word pressure, when I wouldn't sleep. And then, you'd have a tough day in work, and then you'd come home, and, becoming a parent for the first time was, for any parent, it's quite a challenging role. And just to try and cope with all of that, I just wasn't able to do it, Daniel. And then when I got into bed at night, I used to just look at the ceiling and wonder, like, how am I going to keep doing this? And eventually I just could not do it. And I just said to Aoife, I can't do this anymore. I really can't. The struggle was just so intense. And the lack of sleep my behavior had changed. I was distant in work. I was distant from my friends. Just life became a real struggle. And yeah, where I am now compared to then is night and day. It really is.
We want to hear much more about that, of course. But before we get to kind of how everything changed, maybe a few more questions on that really difficult part, 2017 to 2019. Did you talk to doctors? Did you go down kind of the medical route as well?
Yeah. So I just remember I came home in, I think it was around the May time in 2019, and I just came in the door, and I remember saying to Aoife, I just cannot do this anymore. And Aoife said to me, Damien, will you ring your doctor, your GP? So I rang, and I made an appointment with him, and I just said to him that the chronic stress in my life, I said, I just simply cannot do it anymore. And he signed me off for work, or from work, I should say. And subsequently then I stepped down from that role. But he put me in touch with a CBT therapist. And when I started with her, it was very much focused on the stress of the job, but it still had not reached the root cause of my struggles. But it was getting there, and it was touching it. So I started into CBT, and I think maybe about 2 months into that, then I disclosed to the lady that I had been sexually abused. And that was a key moment. To just getting those words out was huge. As I said, I had told Aoife prior to that. But, life took, as I said, our child was 6 months old. Life was busy, and I had tried so many different things. And then fast forward the guts of a year, then lockdown came. Lockdown came in March 2020, and that was when my life really was at rock bottom. I just remember we couldn't leave the house, and it was like it was nearly like it encapsulated the sexual abuse in the term, in the sense that it was like being backed into a corner and you couldn't escape. And that's what lockdown did to me. It completely and utterly broke me down. Um, and I really needed serious intervention. Um, so from that, then, Daniel, I entered into work with, as I said, my psychotherapist in 2020, and things got worse before they got better. The healing work from that was, it was tough going. It was every single week. I was still trying to, obviously, balance that with my home life, uh, and it became very difficult. And yeah, when I look back now, it's been really difficult, really tough. But I'm so proud of myself, the journey I've come on. It was nearly like, for all those years, I wore a mask, and I tried to present myself in public as this person that was, life was great, life was rosy in the garden. I had a, beautiful wife, child, moved into a new house, but the inner narrative was far from that. Um, and perception is not always reality sometimes.
So you found that working with this therapist was difficult, particularly in the beginning, but it ultimately was really helpful.
Yeah,
It sounds like, which
yeah,
which then signals to me that this was somebody who really had some valuable things to teach, and was a really supportive and wonderful person.
mm,
And if I imagine that, like, these very like we all these, let's call it the inner struggles we have, that there's a lot of similarities between them.
yeah,
And I imagine that when it comes to having gone through something really traumatic in the past, well, that, you know, of course, all of us would be impacted in a way that we would have a really, would be very difficult for us. But then something happened in the past, in fact, as in the present, is a lot about, like, us trying to escape the memories of it, escape the
yeah,
thoughts of it, like push it away, and to uh, you know to meet those emotions, thoughts, memories in a different way is kind
mm.
of what leads us out of that struggle, is what I imagine. But in your words, how would you say that work with this therapist was helpful to you?
I think I just remember one of the very first things I did when I went into work with the psychotherapist was, I remember he said to me that if I could get a picture of myself as a 16-year-old, so as in when the sexual abuse happened. So I contacted my mother, and she posted me down a photograph, and literally the journey from that um, was trying to take that little boy, take him hand by hand, and try and get him to the present moment. And it was trying to get a sense of safety in my body. And if you think of sleep and your teachings being that insomnia is a fear of being awake, and there was just fear and anxiousness in my body that I just couldn't relieve. And the work that I did with him was in terms of going back and dealing with every single incident of uh, the sexual abuse, and walking that little boy through it, and just showing him that he's safe now. He's safe. I've got you. And I visualize myself putting my arm around him and showing him that we can get through this, and we're going to get through this together. And dealing with, being able to regulate my emotions, that was a huge one, Daniel. And we did all that work in terms of deep mindfulness work, meditation, and just creating that safety in my body, which I did not have. And as I kept going and kept going with that, that really helped, because if you feel safe in your body, you teach that the body does the rest, basically. Your body knows how to sleep, but I had to get to a place where I was safe. Um, and all that work with a psychotherapist definitely has paid off.
That's so wonderful, Amen. And was it also around this time that you discovered the Sleep Coach School and our YouTube channel?
I think to put an actual date on it, I wouldn't be quite sure. I think it would have been maybe in, would it have been maybe 2021, maybe. A lot of things happened in that year, in the sense that I gave up alcohol. I just made different adjustments to my life. I started, getting more fit. As I said, I gave up alcohol, and I made the brave decision to go to the police or the guards about the sexual abuse. So I reported it, and a lot of things happened from that, which culminated in my abuser taking his own life. So there was a lot of things that took place, particularly in 2021. But then I just remember one day where I was really, really struggling again with sleep. And I just remember going on Spotify, and I said, you know what, I'll just type in sleep. And I typed it in, and didn't I come across your work? So I said, let's turn on a podcast. So I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I just knew in my gut, and I've learned to trust my gut decision. And I just remember listening to one of the podcasts of yours, and I just remember thinking to myself, this is what I need. He's teaching exactly what I need in terms of safety, that if you are lying awake in bed at night, that it's okay, that you don't need to be scared. And that's exactly what I needed. I didn't need sleep restriction. I didn't need any of the CBT-I approach, where it was always trying to fix, always trying to do. I didn't need it to be solved. I just needed reassurance. That's what I needed. And between your work and the work of my psychotherapist, those married together have just were both able to create a situation where my body then was safe. My nervous system was starting to realize that it's okay now. I'm safe. And it's up to my body then to just do the rest and go asleep. So it's just been, I just am so thankful to you for your teachings, for your work. It's incredible, and I'm so grateful.
Wow, I'm so glad that when you typed in sleep and
and here I am now talking.
It showed up. That's amazing.
Mm.
And was it sometimes I have guests and students who have already done a lot of this, like, let's call it inner work, or has really already are on this journey of kind of self-exploration and teaching themselves safety. And when that person then come across our teachings, it can be like, oh, it finally it clicks, like everything clicks, and then things are kind of become easier. Was it like kind of a clicking moment for you, or was it still a bumpy journey from then on?
It certainly was a bumpy journey. It was. There was, it was nearly like there were periods of I thought it was fixed. That word fixed. I thought everything was okay, and then maybe something had happened. I have 3 kids at this point in my life, so one of the kids might wake up at night, and your body would be, oh my goodness, the panic had set in. How am I going to get back to sleep here? So it certainly wasn't an overnight fix. I continued to listen to all of your guest stories, and just I learned probably the most from them. Obviously, your teaching, and I also read "Set It to Forget It," that book, and that played a massive part. So back to what you said there, your work was definitely the missing piece in the jigsaw. I had got the safety and the reassurance from the work with the psychotherapist in terms of emotional regulation and mindfulness meditation, but then your teaching, then being quite similar, was a massive help as well. But yeah, to answer your question, there were definitely a lot of speed bumps. There were a lot of bumps in the road. But it just all came good, really. It all came good, to the point now where if I wake up during the night, I'm fine. I lie there. I might maybe turn on a podcast. I might get up and go to the toilet. but I know that I'm safe because that safety has been created inside of me. And um, I still have nights where I might wake up, but I'm okay because I know I'm safe. My body knows it's safe and it's okay to lie there. And if I'm tired the next day, then so be it. Um, but like it doesn't really happen anymore where I'd had a choppy night's sleep and I'd spend the next full day thinking about it and putting that pressure on myself. That doesn't happen anymore because I've just learned ways to talk to myself and reassure myself. And yeah, I'm okay now if I have a night of no sleep, which doesn't generally happen, but if it does, I'm okay.
That's wonderful. And have you also found that if you have a night where you sleep less, or you have choppy night for any reason, that you may not be as affected the next day as you thought you would be, and that basically a common thing people often see is that feeling like a bit tired and foggy and so forth
Mhm.
is of course natural after we sleep a little bit.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when we feel really exhausted, drained, anxious, frustrated, that's
Mhm.
more from kind of again the storyline around it rather than the fact that we slept little. Did you have such an experience as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was very much a case for me that I'd wake up in the morning and very quickly I'd make a decision. It was nearly like it was either a good night's sleep or it wasn't a good night's sleep. So therefore, if it was a night of maybe less sleep, it was like I'd make a decision. Today's not going to be a good day, and I think it's people say to me about drinking caffeine, and they don't drink it past 1 o'clock. But to me, that's somebody just making a decision in their head. Whereas I could now have a cup of coffee at 8 o'clock at night, but I know I'll sleep. And it's very similar to that in the sense that it's your mind nearly making that decision as opposed to what it actually is. So yeah, maybe that's just my theory. I don't know, but um, I don't make those. I don't make those um, comments to myself in the morning anymore. I'm okay. I just know I'm okay. And yeah, I might feel tired during the day, but I can say to myself, it's okay. I'll get some fresh air. I'll have an extra drink of water. I'll have an extra coffee. I'll disclose. I'll say how I feel. I think I'm very very open now with my feelings and my emotions, and we have that in our house with Aoife and my kids, where it's certainly a house where we say openly how we feel. Um, Communication is very important to us, and yeah, if I find that if I say how I feel in the morning, okay, I feel a bit tired, but I'm okay. That certainly has a massive help to, or is a massive help to me.
Yeah. That's so nice, and we can actually kind of tie things together there in a sense that when you say like it's like we make that decision, or our mind makes that decision, is it going to be a good day or a bad day? It's almost like we can say that the mind decides, or we decide, are we safe or are we not safe, right?
Yes,
It's the same thing. Like
yes,
if our mind goes like we're not safe, then we're going to have a really difficult day. If our
mhm.
mind goes we're safe,
Yeah,
it's going to be fine. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, yeah. It's so true. Like the mind and the just the nervous system. I've learned so much about that, Daniel, like how it all works. And we talk about human beings being, the importance of communicating from one human being to the other, but that communication in your nervous system is so important as well, like your communication between your brain and the rest of your body. And if you can create that safety between both, then sleeping becomes a lot easier. It certainly does. And I find that positive self-talk and you know that empathy towards myself. Okay, if I didn't have a good night's sleep, I'm okay. I'll be fine. And if the same thing happens then the next night, I know I'll be fine again too. Um, so like the less pressure when it comes to sleep is very important.
Yeah, this is the way. And I often make that exact same analogy about like how we communicate person to person, kind of can illustrate our internal conversation, or kind of us teaching ourselves, right? It's, for example, if a person has a different opinion than ours, then if we try to convince another person of our opinion, that's not going to lead to anywhere helpful, because they just become more stuck in their opinion, right? Same
Yeah.
thing kind of internally. We can't force ourselves to think or feel anything. It's more about like being gentle and kind and maybe like suggesting things. But if it
And
doesn't happen,
validation.
right?
Yeah,
Validation, yes.
validation. Yeah, exactly. You can't force somebody to agree with your opinion, and it's so true when it comes to sleep. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. It really is. Yeah.
Wow. Let me ask you these, two final questions I have for everyone, which is, uh, if you could go back to when you started having like sleep struggles and and tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
I think I would tell myself, if I go back to that picture of me as a 16-year-old, I'd put my arm around him and I'd tell him it's going to be okay. Sleep and everything that happened, it's going to be okay. Life is about challenges, and none of us are immune to it. We all are unfortunately going to experience tough things in our life, and you know to me that was the cards that I was dealt with in terms of the sexual abuse, but I faced it head on. And inside of me I just have this inner steel and inner strength that no matter what happens in my life, I'll be okay. Every problem has a solution, and it's the same with the sleep. Yeah, people might go through periods of not sleeping, but just being gentle with yourself and saying to yourself that positive self-talk that it's going to be okay. And if you even just have one person in your life, be it your partner or your friend, that can you just that can be that voice for you or to you, and put their arm around you and just say it's going to be okay no matter what happens, that we can get through that. And that word resilience is something that's huge to me, that no matter what challenge you're faced with in life, there's always a way back from it. And it's the same with the sleep. It mightn't be perfect. You might have choppy sleep at times, you might be struggling, but eventually it's going to be okay.
Wow. Yeah, which you kind of almost already answered the other question I always have for guests, which is like, did you learn things from the sleep struggle that happened in other areas of life? So you already touched upon that. So I'll just say, I'll leave it open for you, Damien. Anything else you want to add?
Nothing, Daniel. I just want to say a huge thank you for giving me this opportunity. Um, I always I always thought about contacting you, but I never felt in a position to do so. I never felt maybe that I was far enough along in my journey to be able to reach out. So you're the first, I suppose, podcast that I've ever reached out to, and just to give me that confidence. And when I look back now at that 16-year-old Damien, I remember the very first time I sat on the therapist chair, I made a promise to him that we were going to get through this together. And here I am now doing my first ever podcast with you. And I'm extremely proud of myself. I'm extremely proud of the journey that I've gone on. And I think, I suppose maybe it comes from me being a teacher myself, but education is very powerful. The power of education and learning. And when I read your two books, I see one of them just behind you. I actually see the two of them said it to forget it. And this is NATO. When I read that and your teaching and all that education, it went into my brain and it stuck and it resonated. And yeah, I come back to that word reassurance, that no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And that safety created in my body as well. So to you, Daniel, I'm so grateful. I love your work. It's amazing. And yeah, I've had a couple of people, reached out to me and asked me, "Oh, I remember you struggled with insomnia. What did you do to fix it?" And I said, I haven't done anything to fix it. What I have done is I've learned. I've learned about sleep, and I've pointed them in the direction of the sleep coach school. So I'd imagine you'll be getting some more people listening to your content in future months and years ahead. So to you, Daniel, I'm so grateful.
I'm so grateful on my end for you being able to share your story here. And this is the first time you shared it, publicly on a podcast. And I'm sure if you want to do that, there, many ways you can help people in this way. But for now, let me just thank you again for all the support, and just be in touch, Damien, and we'll go from there.
Thanks very much, Daniel.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope that you found a ton of value in the video that you just saw. Now, if somebody would ask me, hey, Daniel, what do you think would really help somebody who has tuned in to a lot of the videos, who understands a lot, but who's just not seeing things change for them? I would say contextualization, discourse, to talk to somebody who understands what you've been going through, that you can ask questions to, get a reply, ask a follow-up question, get another reply, etc. That conversation so often starts to clarify things and really kickstarts your journey towards peaceful sleep. And one way you can have such a conversation is by booking a call with one of our coaches. In fact, you can head over to our website, thesleepcourseschool.com, and you can see which coaches offer calls and check out their individual success story to see if their story relates with you, and you find that connection that leads you to see that this is a person that I could work with, this is a person I would talk to, and then you can book a call, and that could be what really kickstarts your journey to where you want to be.